Hey there, everyone. My name's Alex. I've been playing Magic the Gathering for the past 20 or 30 years. And I started out playing with my best friend in his bedroom, building decks out of boxes of cards that he owned. And I started playing on a local tournament level, though never quite competitively, back during Ravnica block. After that, I found that Commander was pretty much my favorite format with a heavy preference for political and group hug themes. So, what that means is that I like to give my opponents resources because I think it's most fun to win at the game when you can demonstrate that you sort of know the board state better than everybody else and can better take advantage of what's available, as well as giving everybody the best of their deck so everybody can pull off what their deck does and what it's supposed to do. With all of that said, I want to take a look at not just two cards today, but a whole bunch. And formatting problem, formatting warning. This is going to be a complete goddamn mess. So, my hair apparently is already on board for that. Let's go ahead and take a look at the Mongers. So, as you can see, I have some trouble formatting this so that you can read all of the text and everything. But the Mongers are all they're all 3/3s for 4, and they're all what I'm going to call option creatures. So they all have their own little unique abilities that anybody can use. We'll start on one side and try to move it at a decent pace. I can. All right, let's see. So that one there, that is the upper left, right. I can't tell. The upper right, I believe. Upper left for you. So that is Squallmonger. Squallmonger is a monger. She is 1 green and 3 for a 3/3 creature, like I said. Pay 2. Squallmonger deals 1 damage to each creature with flying and each player. Any player may activate this ability. Warmonger, which is on the opposite side there, in the corner, tucked all the way away. There-ish? Ish. And he is the ground version of Squallmonger. So he costs 1 red and 3 for a Monger. He is a 3/3, just like everybody else here. Tap 2. Warmonger deals 1 damage to each creature without flying and each player. Any player may play this ability. Then we have Scandalmonger, who's right next to me. 1 black and 3 for a 3/3 Monger. Tap 2. Target player discards a card from his or her hand. Any player may play this ability only anytime they can play a sorcery, which is fairly nice to give him a limitation. We'll talk about why here in a moment. Now, move on to Sailmonger, which is the blue version. So 1 blue and 3 for a 3/3 Monger. For 2, target creature gains flying until end of turn. Any player may play this ability, so she'll give some protection from Warmonger and also make it vulnerable to Squallmonger. And then finally, we have sort of the most unique among the Mongers, the Wishmonger. This is the white one for 1 white and 3 for a 3/3 Monger. Tap 2. Target creature gains protection from the color of its controller's choice until end of turn. Any player may play this ability. Now, all of these creatures are complicated, and they're going to require a bit of a discussion on how you make decisions on how to give options in a political EDH game or a group hug EDH game, because that can be very, very difficult. When you're building your deck, you want to limit options to an assumption that not everyone at the table wants everybody to have a good time. You kind of have to assume the worst of intentions among all the players, not because everybody's going to go out there saying, I want to ruin everybody's day. Not everybody's playing stacks. not everybody plays mass land destruction, but you want to make sure that if you do run into that player, that they're not going to ruin everybody else's time, and you don't really want to give them the option to. So that is where our discussion of Salemonger and Wishmonger can step aside for a moment, because we have to talk about Squallmonger, Warmonger, and Scandalmonger. Squall and War both deal 1 damage to all creatures in play based on their flying status. So this can be really, really frustrating for players who play token decks. This can be really, really frustrating for yourself. If the ability gets activated 3 times, your Mongers are dead. The options are no longer available to anyone, unless you have, for instance, Sail or Wishmonger, who both allow you to protect creatures depending on the flying status you need. These guys can make it really, really hard for newer players who are just trying to play creature-heavy decks to have fun. Of course, you still can use these creatures. They can be pretty good. Again, hey, you might want to be the one doing the board wiping at this point. You might want to enable somebody to do the board wiping, and 6 mana in our deck, made out of the cards we've been talking about so far, not very hard to come by. You know, we talked previously about Belby, who, if there are 3 opponents on play, Belby can generate 6 mana on your second main phase just by punching into your opponents. And hey, Warmonger allows you to Earthquake 3 times to deal 3 damage to a bunch of creatures. 3 toughness is a fairly common range. So it's not to say that you don't ever want to put Warmonger or Squallmonger in your deck. I would personally favor Squallmonger, because Squallmonger is a more sort of specialist case. Not all creatures have flying. Most creatures don't have flying. So I think I don't know if I like using Warmonger, just because he hits most creatures, and that can be very frustrating for myself and a handful of others. The one I really, 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 really want to be careful about is this guy here, Scandalmonger. I've played against discard decks, and 2 mana to force somebody to discard a card is fairly cheap. He's very efficient at what he does, and this is where you really want to look out for your opponent's worst inhibitions. Scandalmonger, if sort of left unchecked, will sort of the worst intent player at the table will take advantage of Scandalmonger and will he will overrun the entire game, because if you can't if you can't draw cards, if you can't keep cards in hand, unless you're a Gravebound player of some form, Scandalmonger he'll just frankly, I've had him ruin a game. Now, this wasn't recently, and this was an online game, so playing face to face, you're gonna get slightly different play groups, because in person people are going to be, they're going to be there face to face. You tend to get less social malignance or less social malice towards other people, and the players there are also going to be more focused on their own deck and their own cards. However, somebody who is hyper aware and is the kind of player to try to ruin other people's times will use Scandalmonger to ruin other people's time. However, I don't think we want to focus on that so much anymore, because we do have 2 genuinely fun, genuinely, universally, in my mind, beloved Mongers to talk about. Wishmonger, or no, let's talk about Salemonger first, because Salemonger allows you to take a creature who doesn't fly and make them fly. Now, of course, this can protect them from good old Warmonger here, which is really useful. It can also make someone vulnerable to Squallmonger. So for 4 mana, you can start dealing, 1 or 2 damage to a bunch of selectively targeted creatures. that you've set up yourself, which is a lot of fun. It's really good to have those complex interlocking strategies where, oh, I don't want my Sailmonger to get killed, so I'm going to give her flying, and I'm going to pump 4 mana into Warmonger here, and now I can wipe out all these walking creatures. Sailmonger is still safe. Excellent. Talking about safety, however, Wishmonger is insane. So there is an old card called Mother of Runes. She taps to give a creature protection of a protection from a color of your choice. Wishmonger is that, but in my mind, so much better. Because Wishmonger gives any creature protection for 2 mana. Now, Rune Mommy doesn't require mana, but she can only do it to 1 creature. Wishmonger can do it to any number of creatures. It's only till end of your turn, but I mean, if somebody starts trying to wrath all of your creatures, then you can pump a handful of mana into Wishmonger to make sure that they're all protected. Of course, my first instinct would be to protect Wishmonger itself. Any sort of spot removal gets disabled by Wishmonger. Any sort of like bounce abilities, I believe, get shut off by Wishmonger. Like anything that'll target your creatures gets shut down by Wishmonger. Now the downside here is, of course, that your opponents can and will do the same to you. But I think that's the fun part of the Mongers in general. All of the things I malign about them are also like upsides. Like your opponents will use these against you. As long as you have opponents who are aware of what's going on the board, this is why I play the decks I do, because my opponents now have all of these same options that I do. These are symmetrical, though not entirely, because of course I still control these creatures, I can sacrifice them. I still get most of the advantage, but I mean, my opponents are gonna have all of these options as well. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. If I were to sort of rank these as far as like which ones are going in the deck, which ones aren't, I'd probably say Wish is the most valuable to put in the deck. Wish is the one I'm going to put in first. Then it's going to be Sailmonger, then Squall, then War, then Scandalmonger. Scandalmonger, I'm not convinced unless you have a card like Endbringer's Revel, which lets you pay 4 mana, any player pay 4 mana, to bring a creature back from their graveyard to their hand. But even then, I'm not really sure I like Scandalmonger. I have not had the opportunity to bring these guys out into play yet. So, if after I get a few games in with these guys, I will go ahead and make another video sort of talking about the Mongers, because I find these 5 creatures to be absolutely fascinating. I find them to be such a great toolkit for malicious and non-malicious players. I find them to be super threatening to a fun, cohesive board if you look at Scandalmonger, Warmonger, but also like really healthy for a fun board looking at Squall, Sail, and Wishmonger. I think that's going to be it for right now. Like I said, when I get more information, when I've actually gotten to play these guys a bit, I will come back and make another video. But in the meantime, if you are interested in thoughts on cards coming from the perspective of somebody who is into EDH, who is into political play, and is into group hug decks, then hopefully what I have to say will interest you at least a bit. But that's going to be it for now.